Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. This is the second installment of the CESaRE webinar series. CESaRE is the Caribbean Journal of Environmental Science and Renewable Energy, and I'm your host for the webinar series, Martyn Forde, and I'd like to welcome to the show our panelists, Mandela Patrick from the University of Oxford, Veta Wade from AQUA Montserrat, and Stephen Snider from Harvard University. Welcome, guys. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
For sure. No, it's a topic that is definitely at the forefront, given how the world is evolving and looking at artificial intelligence and machine learning. So just before we get into the session, I would like to just list a few rules for our audience. If you have questions, please put them in the question chat box, and I will be filtering through to ask the panelists towards the end of our discussion. Now, if you are interested in connecting, if we don't get through all of the questions, I'll be sure to send those questions to the particular panelists so that we are able to connect. And all recordings will be on the CESaRE website, and you can go there to access past episodes as well as podcasts and information around Caribbean research. So before we go ahead and hand off, I'd like to speak with the audience, with the panelists, and have you all share a bit about, how you got into this area of machine learning. Now, I'd like to question to you, Veta. How did you get into this area?
Well, I've actually been working for the past 5 years as an independent consultant around community engagement and the emerging blue economy. So as we know, AI is one of those sectors, one of those areas that is totally intertwined in all aspects of the emerging blue economy across fisheries management, coral restoration, aquaculture, renewables, name it. It's really quite a critical piece, a powerful piece. So my focus, though, has been around building equitable frameworks around the blue economy, and in particularly, I've been quite interested in inclusiveness and resilience. I'm also responsible for sales development in the Caribbean through my consultancy, AQUA Montserrat, for an ocean tech company, which is a leader in the space of vessel monitoring services, which is pelagic data systems. And, they're looking at vessel monitoring for small-scale fisheries. And the use of data analysis and AI also play a part in that. On top of all of that, I have a kids ocean club on Montserrat, where I'm from, called Fish and Fins, and we're strongly linked on talent development and on unlocking economic potential for youth. So supporting the development of good, responsible AI is certainly something that I am keen on weaving into our programs at Fish and Fins as well.
That's amazing.
About me.
That's amazing, and I'm sure we will unpack a bit more about that, especially from the education side. I'm going to pass over next to you, Mandela. Tell us a bit about your PhD and your research and how you got into the field of AI and machine learning.
Hi, yes. So did my undergrad in computer science at Harvard. Graduated a couple of years ago, and took a junior level class in machine learning and AI, and it was sort of like at this perfect intersection of math, stats, and computer science, which I found like super interesting, and got like my real world experience with it, interning on Instagram's machine learning team, building out sort of like core ranking algorithms for their systems, And that was sort of like the first exposure of like how can you apply these sort of like technologies at scale. And decided to then do a PhD at Oxford. And I'm focusing particularly on how can we build algorithms that can get a semantic understanding of video content. So the computers, all sort of sensory data, say speech, the visual will are just a bunch of zeros and ones. And how do you map that sort of very much low level information to sort of like high level understanding automatically, such that we can make certain sort of inference decisions on or make critical decisions, is sort of like my area of research. So there's a lot of applications in terms of being able to say recognize certain events, recognize people, and yeah, applications to say crime detection, etc.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. And you're from Trinidad, yeah?
Yeah, from Trinidad, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. It's good. We have a good representation across the region. We have Stephen next, who hails from Jamaica. Please share a bit about how you came, what you do, and like how you came to get in that space.
Yeah, thank you so much, Martin. And hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Snider. As Martin said, I am from Jamaica. Family lived out in Mandeville in Manchester, but my family now lives in Kingston. I consider that home, although I'm calling it in from Boston, where I'm going to school at Harvard. I'm doing a master's in sustainable development, but my career past 10 years has been in corporate banking and also in sustainable finance. So I'm using that avenue as a way to combine the corporate background with the sustainability that I'm learning so much about. And why I was gravitated to this topic and why I'm here today is how AI is really revolutionizing the financial world. There's major changes happening in terms of jobs, in terms of how information is being processed, how the markets are run. And that has major implications for the Caribbean region, but also in the environmental space, as data needs to be made available for these financial models to incorporate and integrate into algorithms and decision making. So happy to get into that today.
Perfect, perfect. Well, I mean, when there are a lot of different applications, right? And the first question I have for you panelists is, you know, share some examples of what you see as the key applications in play on the horizon that can shape better resilience for the Caribbean, because resilience is a broad term. So speak a bit more to your viewpoint on what true resilience means for your island and for the Caribbean. I'll let who'd like to tackle that one first?
I could start. So I'm hailing from Trinidad, and I have looked at a few sort of startups that are looking into how do you sort of build robotics, robots, and sort of automated factories to sort of make manufacturing more scalable, much more efficient. And Trinidad has like a growing sort of manufacturing industry, and I think there's a lot of opportunity. For example, how can we sort of leverage a lot of the advances in robotics, computer vision, to sort of make our manufacturing system sort of like world class, and really compete with a lot of these companies. For example, like Amazon, most of Amazon's warehouses are pretty much automated, and that's how they're able to sort of deliver stuff that quickly and at that scale. And I think, going into sort of the future, being able to compete with these companies, to compete with these sort of like first world countries, being able to take automation of manufacturing plants, factories to the next level, I think is like a big part of that sort of strategy. And then more broadly, sort of, I think there's a lot of interest in terms of Caribbean is known for its music, its sport, its culture, and being a lot more, say, smarter around the data that we can leverage, and the analytics that we could leverage from those sort of avenues, I think is pretty important. So like even for example, stuff like being able to figure out which target market as a musician, which countries is your music being sort of most accepted in, or which which sort of markets. So a lot of more like analytics around say music, around sports, I think is pretty interesting to sort of like catapult like a lot of our Caribbean artists or Caribbean sports persons to the next level.
Interesting. Veta, I'll turn that question to you as well.
Yeah. So yeah, resilience, I suppose, to me, speaks a lot to our people, our community is, and how do we sort of build this type of capacity to adapt to adversity, environmental crisis, now pandemic, and how do we address risk and protect our natural resources. So on the horizon, there are so many exciting different innovations that we come across. One, for instance, is some quite game-changing technology in regards to fish stock and better managing valuable fish stocks. So there's some technology out there that's currently being tested and hopefully will make its way to the Caribbean soon. And it's called Fish Face. It's been developed by a Swedish company. But what it actually does is facial recognition technology to automate and collect information on species, the different types of fish that's caught, its uses, the size, and it informs management decisions. So it's been trialed in deep water snapper and grouper fisheries, which, as you know, is also very high value fishery for us in the Caribbean as well. And this sort of data capture is valuable, and it helps to improve and hopefully make more efficient the time of our fishers in collecting data. And it's also being used against illegal, unreported, and unregulated fisheries, which is also a serious challenge for us in the Caribbean. I mentioned already pelagic data systems, which is also looking at, tracking vessels, in small scale fisheries and really providing that critical insight in fishing behavior. So whether or not, how fishers are actually behaving in the waters, are they trolling, are they laying fish pots, and where are they located? So there's some interesting work in there as well. I was recently speaking to Patrick of Trinidad, which I'm sure you all know, or at least Mandela would know very well, which is an innovator and icon in that space. And something that's very interesting in regards to my work in engaging communities and stakeholders, especially fisheries in rural areas, is sentiment analysis and how we're using that technology and AI to set up a framework to more easily collect data that is really true, effective, and is really rich feedback. And I think this has enormous potential in regards to how we engage stakeholders in good governance, in even environmental impact assessments and social impact assessments, and especially for fisheries, because fishers are inundated with a ton of asks in regards to surveys. Everybody's interested in what their challenges are, and if we can streamline this process to really gauge their opinions without having to do that very hard manual work, then this is going to be beneficial and revolutionary too in terms of how we capture data and are able to better protect our very valuable marine environment.
No, I find that fascinating, and I really agree with you there. The efficiency, you're speaking about fisheries, which falls in there, climate resilience, and the projections that we've seen around the world is that fisheries are in trouble. And I think having better governance and monitoring around our natural assets is a great thing, and it kind of speeds up the process. You mentioned the recognition technology for for different species of fish. And I've seen it, you know, there's apps already on your phone that you can identify plants. And most recently, I saw one where you can identify plant diseases with a picture, which I mean, I saw that I think last week when I was prepping for our discussion here, and I thought that was quite fascinating. But I digress.
So much opportunity as well for the same thing underwater. So we're a little bit further back from that to be able to identify, you know, coral disease or, you know, various issues like that, and identifying different species. If we could do that below water as well, there's a tremendous amount of opportunities for our communities to get involved in.
That's fascinating. And I guess I'll ask the question to you now, Stephen, about you know what applications of AI and machine learning do you see on the horizon for shaping better resilience from your perspective and your position in the industry?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm definitely gonna have to get that app from you because I have a little problem with my tomato plants in my garden. I've been trying to figure out, and I'm not getting a good answer online. So we'll talk a little bit about that afterwards. But from my standpoint, right, resiliency is being able to withstand changes within the system, whatever system that we're talking about. And where I approach the world is from this financial system that we have that is still stuck in a very traditional neoclassical view that is capitalism dominated. And because of that, we are not integrating the environmental impacts that are happening because of climate change, because of pollution, because of all of the issues that we're very much concerned about when we talk about sustainable development. The financial markets do not incorporate them into the valuation of a company's debt, into a country's debt, into a company's valuation on the stock market. And that's a real gap that artificial intelligence, that machine learning, broadly speaking, is able to achieve. If you see where we are now with the financial system, right, here in the United States, I think I read that it's over 70% of trades are done automatically through algorithms just by seeing what is happening within the markets. And this has led to date crashes that are happening because of a problem within the algorithm that oftentimes is a black box that analysts are like, why are we going down? Oh, because there's momentum and it drives the stock market down for the day. And we've had to implement stop gaps to prevent that sort of trading, to allow for the systems in place to catch up to the availability of data. And I see the future of this when it comes to sustainability is that the data that Veta just mentioned, the data that Mandela just mentioned, those points can be integrated into the financial market to provide a better valuation of the assets that we're talking about, be it a company to better understand what their impact is on the environment, to understand if employees are happy and being treated appropriately, if there are workers in the supply chain that are being taken advantage of as child labor, or even sentiment analysis, where we're able to incorporate understanding of where the market is headed towards, right? And it's this powerful tool that allows us to collect all of these data points and integrate them into our system understanding. That's really interesting for me to see how that's going to be changing.
Well, I mean, all of you raise very fascinating points, and you know, in the electricity field where I work, we notice that artificial intelligence is key for managing, or machine learning will be key for getting data, understanding that data, making sure that we can better balance our systems. It's expensive in terms of where the market is right now for different types of tech. But what the question that I want to ask you all is what is the risk of the Caribbean not getting on top of this right now, and being a price you know, traditionally sometimes we wait for innovation to happen, and because of many varying factors, whether that's economics, whether that's the cost of certain systems and the human capacity around it, we end up being kind of like, it has to get to a commercial stage before we're involved. So what's the risk of us not getting involved right now in AI and machine learning?
I got a great example of how there is a lot of financing available through development banks, through World Bank, United Nations for adaptation and resiliency projects within the Caribbean. And a common critique I have of why we're not seeing more of those money being funneled towards our region is the lack of data and the lack of usable information that's needed in project finance. Of how can you hope to build a major energy facility when you don't know what's happening on the ground, you don't know what the needs are of the population, or how are we going to be able to protect the marine area where we don't understand what is in or what has been mapped. These are immediately I thought of how that would be essential for us to be able to capitalize on that money.
Mm-hmm. So if I understand you correctly, better energy market communication can build active, like instead of reactionary planning, more like anticipatory planning. And that's something that I've seen myself in my work experience. I worked in Germany once and at a utility, and we had to do energy trading. And the one thing that stood out to me is they had a program that every morning all the utilities would feed their information into the system. So say 900 utilities across Germany, and that would allow the traders to understand, comparing it to historical data, to understand better how to make trades and nominations and that sort of thing. And I thought that was fascinating. But Mandela, you know, like with your experience, what do you think is the risk of us not being involved in the very early stages, and why is that?
So I think from my experience, what I think a problem I think the Caribbean faces in general is sort of being able to think at a more innovation level rather than say a consumption level. And what that fundamentally means is that we are driving the technology that we need to sort of push us forward rather than having to rely on, say, companies or countries outside of the region. And that is particularly frightening with AI because it's pretty much garbage in, garbage out. So the data that you feed these models, the quality of that data is directly proportional to the output of its predictions and its recommendations. And data is very nuanced. Like the sort of data that is unique to the Caribbean that would be sort of relevant for us is very different to a lot of the data in the Western world. And if we sort of have to outsource these models or outsource these technologies from Western countries, they do not, the data that they use to train these models do not reflect our sort of society and our sort of nuances. I think so. For example, there was this example recently. I think it was this IB. I don't know if you're familiar with the IB exams. It's sort of like CAPE for like a bunch of sort of like CAPE. But it's used,
bachelorette.
Exactly. Yeah. And I saw that they're using some sort of AI model to predict whether like what grades that students are gonna get because they kind of take exams, for example. And like I have no idea what data they use, but the fate of 170,000 students based on an AI model is scary to say the least. And sort of if we, for example, just be like, all right, say we had a similar issue in the Caribbean, let's use this exact model to sort of make predictions for our students. The output would be like totally wrong, and sort of yeah, it would be very problematic. So I think the whole like bias fairness issue, and having that, being able to sort of innovate and build your own models, build your own data pipelines, I think is important, particularly for AI, because of the whole garbage in, garbage out sort of problem.
Yeah, you touched on something there that I hear a lot about in tech circles is you know, you say garbage in, garbage out, but even the unconscious bias that's put into programming and put into systems at the beginning of developing AI could also create scenario where we have challenges, but they're not fully contextualized to our particular culture and our particular need. And so, but I don't want to go too far into that without asking Veta again what she sees as the risk of not being involved.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, what you both spoke about, because I was thinking very similarly, actually. We are, I was thinking about two things, actually. The concerns with regards to getting these systems in place, because we're pushed because of COVID to fast track how we efficiently utilize almost every system that we are working with in the region. But and so at what point are we relying on those off-the-shelf solutions as opposed to making our own? So the challenge, I think, and the risk that we face is that we risk actually having to buy into products that are not representative of our communities and may not really themselves have the ability to capture the insight that we need from the ground to design those bespoke solutions for our islands. And that's why AI needs to be really looked at in terms of its inclusiveness and its representation. But perhaps the biggest risk here is the missed opportunity that we create for our people, because this is an enormous opportunity area, and it's got a powerful potential for sort of like cultural shifts towards you know, improving ways of life for us all in the Caribbean. When you look at what's happened in general software development, we as a Caribbean nation, we've waited too long to jump on board with that. Very difficult now to compete with, you know, the big developed countries, China, India. And I feel very encouraged to see people like Mandela working in this space, because when we look at it, I think that we have an enormous opportunity because we're small space, and if with great collaboration, there is the potential for us to develop our own experts, our own AI talent. And considering the fact that there is this massive shortage in this sector, then what my fear is that we lose our best and brightest minds to those machine learning engineered jobs and data scientist jobs that we need to fill for our communities.
No, that's a very good point. Just this morning I had a meeting and we were talking about capacity, you know, how we use the term capacity building a lot, but it really is capacity strengthening and sharing that makes us resilient in the region. And we were talking in that particular conversation, we were talking more about, like, you know, disaster management and also the energy space. But one thing that stands out to me is, like, if the human capacity that we have like very highly intelligent persons working throughout the region, and the thing that is seen as a challenge to us, for example, hurricanes, earthquakes, even what's going on in light of COVID, because we are the Caribbean and small jurisdictions, we are having to adapt to the real challenges very quickly and become very nimble. Now, Now, based on what you all are telling me here, is like if we aren't nimble with this in this field of work, we're missing an opportunity to create even more efficiency in all the different aspects. And in the Caribbean, sometimes we're a bit siloed in our work, but given the pace at which COVID, hurricanes, financial market crashing, the pace at which these things are happening, resilience, from what you're saying to me, and AI and machine learning, the silos can be broken down as well. It can be used as a tool to break down silos between industries. Would I be right in saying that? What do you think? Or was I clear in that? Or
Yeah, no, repeat that question again. I missed
no,
the end.
I was just stating that from what you all have been telling me, that AI and machine learning could be utilized to break down silos between different industries as we address challenges like climate change, disasters, stock market crashes. It would help us if we get on it. We can be more efficient and work across industries and be
Yeah,
more nimble.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, that's it. Yeah, well, I guess if it's okay with you all, I will issue a poll to the audience because I want to hear how they're receiving the information. So I'm going to go with what you talked about, Stephen, the financial markets. So the question to you all is, how can AI and machine learning build resilient sorry, are you seeing resilience in the financial markets of the Caribbean? Now you should have a poll come up on your screen, and you can choose multiple. So I'll just give you a few more seconds before I share the results. Right. So just looking at the results, 53% said it would assist with supply chain for financial markets. 87% said market efficiency, 47% transparency, 27% job security, 33% said national security. Stephen, I'll start with you. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's really interesting results. I think market efficiency is very high in people's minds from my side because of the automatic trading that I mentioned before, of how financial markets are incorporating AI to allow them to better maximize returns, better manage risk. One thing I wanted to bring up in this conversation was ESG and the environmental, social, and governance factors that are being incorporated into sustainable finance. And ESG is a framework within which we're able to add another dimension to our traditional polling, to our traditional models of where it is the more risk you take, the more financial return you're going to generate. But in these financial models, we leave off environmental impact completely, where we're not considering what return or risk do for the environment, for our society, for our governance. So ESG is a framework within which that we can improve on that market efficiency by integrating data, as I was saying, that's able to better manage risk. We're able to evaluate our economy. And the example here that, bringing up COVID and going back to the question before about down silos, is how our supply chains, especially here in the Caribbean, are not able to withstand the major shocks that have happened. We've seen that in tourism, we've seen that in manufacturing, we've seen that in shipping, and it raises a lot of questions of how are we going to build a resilient future when our financial markets don't incorporate these things. So to that end, ESG is a way to measure risk and to say, do my operations consider these black swan events where something in 100 years happens? And we're seeing these events on a more regular basis, right? So if you think about a hurricane season, they're predicted to be getting stronger and stronger. And we see that in the records so far, and we're getting that from meteorologists saying that it's going to be worse. So in my mind, organizations that are able to better manage this risk, to better incorporate these differences in valuation, are going to be the ones that are going to benefit in the long term. That's where I stand.
Well, I was interested in seeing how familiar the audience is with environmental social governance. I just want to do that right now. So you'll see a poll. Have you heard the term before? Or you utilize it? Are you familiar with it? And Stephen, I'll just ask you to elaborate more on the definition once we get the results back.
Yeah, because it's good that you're asking this of the audience, because in some circles this is in other circles this is just an evolution of what has been happening in the financial markets for years.
Right. So 64% said they're not familiar with it. 27% said yes, and 9% were unsure. So Stephen, just elaborate a bit more on what you meant by environmental social governance factors.
Sure. So the reason why I said this has been around for a while is that if you think about value investing, of where you put your money based on what you believe in, that's going back for years. You can think about how apartheid was helped to be ended by investors deciding to move money away from South Africa, or the Catholic Church deciding not to invest in specific industries, or the Catholic Church now, the Pope, saying we'll invest in climate change, right? So this is a growing field within the financial markets. In 2016, it was estimated to be $23 trillion, and that's grown substantially since then. Last time I checked, it was over 35 trillion invested globally in ESG, meaning that they consider more than just profit making. They consider what is a sustainable investment that is contributing to the development of our planet. And so that's why, given my background and my interest in the region, why I am an advocate for this topic and see how it's being incorporated into
No, I appreciate it. I know, and we speak about AI and machine learning very broadly, but AI is like an umbrella term, as one of our audience members pointed out. So could you, I guess, Mandela, I would direct this towards you. Could you explain, some of the different aspects of AI? It's not just voice recognition, machine learning.
Yeah, happy to. So yeah, so artificial intelligence broadly means, can we get computers to sort of mimic human intelligence? And that is sort of then divided into sort of two main sort of streams, which previously what we call rule-based sort of AI. So for example, you have some sort of internal understanding of, for example, like if you're building an AI to play chess, if you build a rule-based AI, you sort of know which moves are more important than others, and you sort of like hand define which rules the computer should take, which steps the computer should take given some certain conditions. And how the field has shifted more recently is what we call machine learning, which is where we don't explicitly hand define the rules that we want the computer to learn. We allow the computer to learn those rules implicitly from the data itself. And that has, so the machine learning aspect of AI has what has sort of transformed AI, particularly because of sort of like because a lot of these technologies in core algorithms of machine learning has been developed maybe like 50, 60 years ago. But it's only recently that a combination of large amounts of big data because of the internet, huge amounts of computing power through Moore's law, and some advances in the algorithms that we've been able to see this sort of tipping point in how good these technologies are. And then on the machine learning, the sort of popular sort of branches of machine learning are computer vision, which is what I did my PhD in. So how can we get the computer to just generally understand the visual world? And that is what is driving, for example, self-driving cars. That is what is driving, say, surveillance technology with drones, etc. Then there is natural language processing. So how can we get computers to understand natural language? So for example, when you say type an email on Gmail, it's able to predict what your next few words are, able to autocomplete what you're trying to write. And then there is speech recognition, which is, can we understand spoken commands? So Siri, Alexa, all of these technologies are driven by these sort of core areas.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. I did want to ask one more, Paul, because Veta, you mentioned the education system earlier on, and I just wanted to know if the audience feels we're using AI enough as best we can in our education systems. And then I'll ask you, Veta, to speak a bit more about the work that you've been doing.
Okay, that's fine. Interesting to hear what people think, because as we were speaking about earlier, I was, expressing my concerns with regards to AI, and it also comes home to me quite heavily as well in regards to work in the emerging blue economy for the Caribbean region. Is how well are we really positioned to take advantage of this?
Mm-hmm. No, it's true.
And overwhelmingly, we see the results.
Yeah. So 92% said no, that we're not using it, and 8% said yes, we are using it adequately in the educational system. Are you surprised by those results?
No, not at all. Last year with my kids' ocean club, I on Cool Fish and Fins here on Montserrat, we did a STEAM festival, which looked at really the marine environment and how do we incorporate science, technology, engineering, and mathematics and art, in fact. And I did that because I also saw the need for us to start to capitalize and prepare our young people for these new technologies. It's as if, you know, the world is speeding along. We're trying to catch up, and hopefully we'll jump on the bandwagon on time. But you know, there's still a lot of work to be done on the ground as to how well can our communities and our people, our next generation young people, be best positioned to take advantage. And in education system, you see that we have, and I don't know how it is across the region. It would be interesting to hear about the other islands, or if, you know, those of those listeners who are on the call can share on that as well. But we have a curriculum system that is focused on, you know, like Microsoft programming, and a lot more needs to be done on taking it that much further: 3D modeling, coding, data analysis. Because again, as you know, as I extend on a point that I mentioned earlier, is that, you know, AI is not really as simple as coding. So it takes a lot of time for the big countries like, you know, China, India, to ramp up and provide these low-cost solutions. They have a massive AI shortage, and you know, we could be at risk of having just a few people that we have to champion these technologies, and to work in academia and provide services to industry. We could lose those to outside forces, which leaves us undone. And again, this is a space that could really provide tremendous opportunities for not only our systems, our supply chains, but our you know, just general wealth and upskilling of our communities. So yeah, this is what I'm thinking in regards to where we at and where we want to go, and the time is running out as to how we need to create that appropriate workforce and environment for AI to really thrive. You know, and it's a cultural shift. In fact, we need to see you know, our mindset change in regards to, you know, how we're embracing these new ways of learning for our next generation, and how we incubating ideas and nurturing creativity.
Mm-hmm. No, I 100% agree. And you know, you touched on the key question, like how do we start to implement this? Like, so I just turned to Stephen and Mandela. Like, what needs to happen for us to better integrate AI and machine learning into our curriculums across the region? Like, what would be the first steps you think need to happen to make this more accessible?
Mandela, you want to start? I got a great organization. Caribbean Girls That Hack is an excellent organization. I'm friends with the main organizer. Everybody, please go and check out their Twitter and their Facebook page. I don't know if we can put that into the chat. I'll do that in a second. But I think that's a really great organization to get involved with. There's tons of really great talent that I'm seeing in the Caribbean who are talking about these issues, and they're getting groups together, and I love that they're trying to incorporate the kids in this and teaching them the importance of coding and like how vital these skills will be to them down the line. You know, like in the financial sector, every job that is focused on number crunching, anything that is calculation based, is going to be done by a computer. And that's going to happen within the next 10 years. Within our lifetimes, those jobs will be completely removed. And all that will be done within the financial sector is value-driven, qualitative work where you have to be creative and thinking how a computer doesn't think. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think that's a good question. I think I think starting people as young as possible, I think, is definitely the move. So I've been working I'm working on sort of a curriculum to sort of help Trinidadian students sort of enter the field, and we're sort of starting in Trinidad this summer actually, to sort of expose kids to a lot of these technologies, and hoping to sort of like expand to the rest of the Caribbean as we sort of iron out some of the details. So if people have like certain contacts or ways to sort of expand this throughout the Caribbean, would please be in touch. And yeah, I think getting some sort of like corporate, I think for me the exciting part is like AI, I think it's like very much positive, and most people don't understand sort of like the practicality of it, or sort of like the everyday. It's literally like you can't use your phone without AI influencing what you do at any point in time. So I think sort of exposing kids to sort of just the how widespread this technology is, and the practicality of it, and it's going to touch a bunch of different industries. It's not only going to be, for example, people who are doing computer science, like if you're a doctor, if you're in finance, if you're in environmental sustainability. It's going to sort of like touch every industry. So sort of like showing people the sort of expansiveness of it, I think is pretty important.
I agree with you both. I mean, even Mandela, we met at the Tech Beach conference in Jamaica a few years ago, and that when I went there, it just was fascinating to me to see how many amazing products that the Caribbean had in the tech space in general, to the minds like yourself and Veta and Stephen, all working in different aspects to bring the Caribbean to the forefront. So I agree with you, it has to be a long-term type of plan for multiple, for the next generation as well. And then also, I guess we had a question come in about what are some of the challenges? And Stephen, you alluded to one of the answers, that most calculation-based jobs may be done using AI. So then, how do we have the foresight and move forward? But are there any other challenges that you see with AI coming on board in the Caribbean, and how would you address them? I don't know if Veta, if you want to answer that one.
Yeah, Martin, I was just thinking that the basic data, especially in some of the work that I do, say for instance in fisheries, the collection of data is in many ways crude, incomplete. It's one of the biggest challenges. If even we had the solutions, the algorithm solutions, then where are we getting the data from, and what quality of data is there? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in getting that good quality data, and enough of it. And really, there is that issue of trust as we sort of build momentum and build strength in this area as a region, because I see that there is that need for a greater sort of collaboration amongst the stakeholders in this area, academia, industry, so that we could see that academia can actually help in solving some of these challenges that the industries have. And in the Caribbean, it stands to reason, I think, that we can go further if we were to work together a little bit more. The data is really within industry and governments, but the question is how much are governments and industry willing to share that data, and how can policies and legislation be adaptive to see that we can access that data, and the researchers in this space and analysts in this space can work with it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree with you. What say you, Stephen and Mandela?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that point for sure. I think another interesting point of to be made is that data is fundamentally an asset in of itself. I think the Caribbean has potentially very valuable data, especially epidemiology data that can be leveraged as a sort of as an asset that to bring in sort of top researchers to sort of license our data to sort of further advance science in other areas. So I think thinking more intelligently about the data that we have and the strategic advantage we have with certain data that is unique to the Caribbean, I think is something we need to do a little more of, and it goes on to that point that Peter was making.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate the points raised by the panelists. While it is a challenge, it's a real opportunity for our island nations because we have the opportunity, especially now with COVID, to redirect energy towards sectors that are going to benefit us in the long term. Like this hashtag of Build Back Better, it's more than just a hashtag. It's a real concept that policymakers, business owners have to really start to think deeply on. And when it comes to machine learning, there's the opportunity of incorporating it into our business models. When it comes to students, it's an opportunity for you to learn how you can craft the conversation and the skills necessary to understand what it is. And it's also a really great space for the creatives, right? To really stand up and show the value that our Caribbean culture has, right? To think that small island nations in this region have so much soft capital to influence the world is for me a major asset that no computer, no system that we design will ever be able to take away. So how do we begin to incorporate it beyond just tourism, beyond just the simple exploitation or dollar generating of our creativity? How do we take it to the next level of the evolution of human 2.0 of what it is meaning to be a really artistic and creative species?
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for that. And I mean, I see the time here, so I just wanted to synthesize what I've heard today. To the audience, thank you for joining us. As we can see, there are a lot of challenges with that we face in the Caribbean right now. We have challenges with our national security due to climatic events. We have it due to financial systems that need to be built and become more resilient. We have skills that we need to build in the interim to be able to diversify our economies beyond tourism and focus on, you know, more efficient systems, more high-tech jobs created. But like Stephen mentioned, embracing our creativity, and creativity will be able to drive some of these unique challenges we have. And as Mandela stated, and Veta, quality data, focusing now our time on gathering that data, building that behavior of open sharing around challenges, because yes, we could take something off the shelf from a bigger country, but that is contextualized to that country. We have our unique challenges in the Caribbean, but we also have one of our biggest strengths, which is our people. And that's our resource to help us form some sort of resilience moving forward. And in so doing, coordinating around resources like the natural resources such as the marine areas, having people have that financial literacy to understand what the AI is bringing, and to address, you know, what are potential fears with systems, and making sure that we are planning to address unconscious bias by being involved in the process and looking to each other across the region to build resilience. That's what I've been taking away from this. Am I missing anything, panelists, that you like to leave the audience with? Nita?
I think that was brilliantly said, Martyn. Excellently said and summarized. I don't have much more to add, but to perhaps emphasize the mindset change that we all need to embrace to really benefit from these new opportunities. That AI does need to be inclusive, and we need to celebrate the diversity of culture that's in our region, and somehow marry the two. So on that note, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to continuing conversations with you guys again.
Yes, for sure. And thank you, everyone. Like, I really do look forward to us following up on this and hearing more about how your careers are developing, how your research is developing, your work, your products. And, for those of you in the audience, if this was interesting to you or you feel we missed something, you can reach out. But always remember that you can go to reach out to CESaRE to hear more of this type of research, because the whole purpose of the journal is for us to really capture who's doing what in the region, from the region, for the region, and making sure that we have that synthesized in a place where we can, like you said, data is everything, right? Like, it is value to data. So even in this effort, we want to know who the persons are generating and recognize them for that quality of data. So to everyone, have a great week, and thank you very much, panelists, for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.